How's it going?
Hello.
Another
Amazing.
Watson weekend we've got on the books. It's exciting to be here. I am recovering from my NRF FOMO. Uh, my co-host here, not Nick again,
Haha.
is he's here channeling his outer Rick Watson, and we're so happy that you are here. Looking very dapper, I must say. You brought the game today.
I channeled my inner Rick Watson on my first go round, and I felt like in order to kind of keep the seat warm and continue to be invited back, I had to up my game this week. So
Well, you brought it. You're looking really sharp. And I am still almost through dry January. I have to admit, I cheated. It's now just a damp January. So you
I'm
can
very
only make it
opposed to
so
dry
far.
January.
You can only
Just
make it so far. And I'm sure that the bars were not dry at the NRF parties. What was that? What was
they
going
were
on?
not. I mean, I survived NRF, and where I'm recovering in terms of my step count. I think I always find it so interesting to look there. It is
Yeah.
a massive show,
Yes.
and it was great. And yes, the understanding I had from amongst people, our guest who will announce at some point, who are making the rounds, is that the tabs were open and the bars were crowded, and there were quite a few people at NRF. So it was fun. I got my professional headshots done. There's a lot of swag and things. I found the
Hmm.
swag less, but the perks up. So
Okay. All
my
right.
direction from the cameraman when I did it was to capture my sexy disdain look. So
Oh, oh, nice. Can we see
whatever,
a little bit of that look? Or
whatever that means. I think like I'm upping my LinkedIn game, so I'm going to save that. So
okay.
for all of you who don't follow me on LinkedIn, follow me on LinkedIn. I'll drop some of those shots, but not today. That's important.
There's going to be a drop similar to what we're also going to talk about. It's our in our brand story, Stanley, they're making drop big, right?
Big drops for
Um,
big gains.
my headshot, if you follow me on LinkedIn, is generated by AI. I guess I'm revealing the. So I'm curious, like, what was the AI story going down at NRF? No AI headshots, but
I mean, everyone, and we'll kind of as we get
yep,
like into the segment, we'll talk about it a bit. AI was in everybody's booth, whether it was in their title, in their giveaways. It was like AI, and AI. I don't know that it's really fully clear, other than helping people write and computing what it actually is doing. But I will say, whereas a few years ago when Meta, crypto were like really big and everyone was talking them, and then they kind of went away, AI is not going away, and I think that it is going to be a year of progression and evolution. And in speaking to people on the provider side, they're working feverishly to incorporate it into their product offerings, to both improve the offering as well as to improve what their consumers, their customers do with that. So it
right,
was big. I
yeah,
can't give you any this happened, but I can tell you it's happening.
it's there, right?
Yeah.
It's in the air. We're breathing
Well,
it.
I think it's sort of an interesting push into like talking a little bit about, like kind of January, right? And some of the things that we're seeing happen vis-a-vis AI in terms of the world. I mean, there was a lot of news overnight. Wayfair cut, uh, I think 13.5% of their workforce today.
Yes,
Macy's cut, I think they said 2,500 jobs, and there'll be further reductions. Even, Google and talked about it had done some layoffs, and it had talked about more to come.
exactly. And another one that surprised me was the Amazon Buy with Prime announcement, where they were shedding some of the folks that had been part of that project, and they had talked about this integration. We even shared on the show last year on the Meta partnership, and so it's just interesting to see that that's being reshaped and what they're doing. So I'm with you. If you can't feel safe at Amazon and Google, where can you feel safe? And what does that mean for the outlook in
I
2020?
think with Amazon, they sort of showed their true colors this week with a Diamond Sports acquisition, which was
Mhm.
interesting, but really telling as to where they make their money. I think that's what this is about. And as we look at some of the moves this week, in terms of some C-suite shakeups and additions, and we think about some of the exits and how people are sort of uh, Allbirds had a promotion and a addition, which I thought
Yep.
sort of showed their level of desperation. I think People are really trying to compete in tough spaces and are needing great people to do that. We saw homegrown people at both Target, new COO, and at Lowe's, right? Lowe's,
Yep.
yeah. Marvin Ellison's always ingrained into my
It
mind.
always.
We saw, um, them take really like great culture people. Those companies are built on culture, and they promoted people up. And then we saw Hello Bello, which is sort of interesting, bring
Right.
in as part of its transition through distress, more of a formulaic CEO that sort of been there, done that to effectively execute a strategy. So I think people are always looking for great people, but it's also demonstrating that this is not a cyclical business any longer. It's not like we sort of do fourth quarter, we end fourth quarter, we sort of clean up in January, which is end of fourth quarter, and transition into Q1. I mean, I think it's every month is a build on build on build in this very dynamic place. And so getting great people are going to NRF and finding interesting technologies, which I don't know that there necessarily were, but it just never stops. So I think that, to sort of talk a little bit about that, and we sort of talked a bit about the org of the future, right?
And Adam was great last week. I
Oh
thought
my
he
God,
brought
so
such an
awesome.
amazing perspective, and we had a lot of great feedback on just not only his talking points around branding and the emphasizing there, but also just how he's thinking about this org of the future and what he's seeing. So I know that's something that we're going to unpack. Well, I know that we are getting into the show, and we wanted to start to hit on the topics that we're talking through today. So we've got a couple of things to dive into, and we are bringing in the man behind the curtain, our amazing producer, Vinny O'Brien, who
Incredible.
is going to come in and talk not only about NRF, but channeling some of the other things that we're talking about here today and things that he sees not only domestically, but he's always bringing that global perspective as well, which I think is so helpful to look at how we can compare and contrast those trends. So I'm excited about that. And he was doing some version of trains, planes, and automobiles to get
Right.
to NRF. So we want to unpack as like, was it really worth it? That's something I'm dying to know. I think we can start to bring him on if
Yeah.
you guys are ready to get into the show.
I mean, I spent time with him at NRF, and I feel like I've known him forever. Here he is, Vinny. Vinny is not only an incredible producer, and I think has so much that he does for this show that people are going to hear a bit about today, but he's from Ireland. I think Vinny does claim that his teams set up the daily digital deals in Dublin. We'll talk a bit about that
That's right.
maybe. But he has worked with some pretty reputable brands, eBay, Pepsi, GM over the last 10 years. He has worked on it with him and been an instrumental part, and um, impressively took a bus to Dublin, then laid over, took a train from the plane, then he landed to New York to get there, and then was all over the city in a whirlwind few days. So, Vinny, let's.
Yeah, we'll start to dive in. Well, we always love our two truths and a lie.
I was not Rick last week on that, so definitely. So, you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. Let's go.
Okay.
Let's hit it.
Okay.
Hmm?
Here we go. All right. One, Vinny served ice cream in Snowflake in East Hampton for a summer.
Okay.
Two, Vinny was a qualified butcher. Look at him. And three, he has run the 400 meter in less than 55 seconds. 55 seconds.
The
Um,
accuracy is important there.
the accuracy is important. I know. Is this the part of the trick? I'm gonna go with the butcher is the lie.
Thumbs
No.
down.
I'm just
Dang
going to go with the
it.
400 meters.
Yeah. I
Well,
don't.
yes, you're right, Nick. You've
Hmm.
seen
I
me.
don't think
I've
You could have taken it and
it's
claimed
okay.
a win.
been
You being
introduced as being given the global perspective. That's a life's mission complete, Jess. I owe you for that one. Thank you.
It also feels like since spending only 2 days with you at NRF, I've known you my entire life. I think it's really important to do NRF with someone else. And I was talking to Rick, and I even said, I'm really excited to go to NRF with you next year. Vinny and
Need a
I
balance.
both had, yeah, I mean, we both had different tracks, right? I think you do go to NRF, not just for the networking component and the discovery component. I think the relationship component is really important. So we'll talk a bit about that, but yeah.
Yeah.
Because it'll set the tone in many ways, I think, for what I experienced. But the first thing is the House of Cisco is back, baby. But I actually heard somebody say that. And the second thing, which I thought was very funny, was now that is 70,000 pieces of content. That is an infinite number. You do the math.
Right.
Two things I actually heard in the 2 days. Now, I know there was a lot of drinking going on, but they seem kind of ridiculous, don't
Yeah.
they?
What time of the hour was this?
I'm not
Blurry
sure
on
it
that.
mattered at NRF.
I was a little blurry on that myself, Jess. But again, just before we jump in, I was having some fun. I was thinking, what is NRF and who's it for? And I was an NRF virgin. So for me, this was really, really new territory. I do the conference scene over here. I go to London, I go to Dublin, Belfast, all the different places. But I was thinking, what does NRF actually mean? And if I was to rewrite it to give it this new pizzazz, what could I possibly call it? So I came up with 6 different uses of the acronym NRF instead of National Retail Federation. So look, I'd love some feedback. I'm not going to give you the 6; it would just take too long. But there's a couple in here I think are worth just calling out. So the first one is nifty retail fanatics, for those who can't resist the allure of the latest retail trends and gadgets. Is that a thumbs up or a thumbs down? Would you go to that?
Just because of Nifty, or what? Where is it?
Exactly. I mean, like we've only done this twice and already we're like kindred spirits.
Okay. Jess, what do you think? Never-ending retail frenzy, describing the 24/7 hustle of online marketplaces where the deals and the competition never sleep.
Better.
Whoa, there we go.
Never ending. Retail
Never-ending.
frenzy.
It's relentless.
It's a frenzy. Like
Especially
someone should live stream it. They should live stream it and like monetize that. They should create their own live retail media network.
I think we just have. Anyone wants to get involved, let us know, and we'll happily produce a show with you. But I'll do one more before we jump in. It is networked retail futurists, for the forward thinkers who are always predicting and creating the next big thing in retail. I could sell that one, I think.
You're going this
Neutral.
neutral. Okay, so the
So
middle one wins. What
yeah.
is? I wonder what our audience thinks.
Or what does the audience think? They had to have attended.
They're probably wondering who the hell I am. But look, thanks for having me on the show, guys. It's really good to be this side of the camera, and I'm kind of excited to get into NRF and the other topics. But Nick, I want to open with a question I've asked you a few times, and Jess, like you've been there before, but who is NRF for?
That's a really good question. I think it's for everybody at this point that has some level of commerce. At the same time, it's kind of for nobody. If you want to go and hear what's happening and talk to people and meet people, attend some events, it's great. And I think it's a great way for young people, especially, to begin to build a network and get exposed if they can go. If you're going to look for the latest, greatest, newest, forward-thinking technology, I mean, it's there. Good luck finding it. It's sort of a needle in a haystack. And I think, as we talk a bit about the upper funnel component for brands and service providers of top of funnel like exposure, I think very few people kind of invested in that in terms of like expressing who and what they were. I walked by so many people, I bet they were like interesting, but I just had no idea. And with hundreds and hundreds of people to go by and things to learn and see specifically, it was tough. But I'd say it is for people who want to get to their providers in one place and have that face to face. It's for people who want to hear what's going on. And I think it is for big companies. It is like a party, right? I mean, those big booths, we should have taken a picture of the SAP and Microsoft booths. I mean, they're like cities.
I don't
So,
have a lens wide enough to capture it.
right, exactly.
You could do the panoramic with your iPhone. Yeah.
I was just afraid someone might talk to me and I'd have to talk back. That was my only fear there.
I disagree on that sense. I mean, behemoth, and they were talking. But I kind of wonder, and I mean, maybe we can delve into this topic in another show. And I asked someone this question, and they said they gave me an answer. I'm curious to hear what you guys think. How many businesses do you think there are that have a GMV of $1 billion plus?
Not many.
Because that person answered 1,000, and I'm sure a quick Google search will tell us somewhat directionally. But I think if you look at the top floor, so NRF's the way it sort of breaks down is like there's a basement that's massive that's sort of for the smaller, right? And it's interesting, Shopify was in the basement last year, and to show you the sort of evolution and growth of Shopify, they were like center main floor with a massive booth. And someone told me I think that Shopify had over 100 of its own employees there. And so then there's that floor, which is behemoth and mid-market people too. It's pretty wide. Then there's an innovation floor. So I think that how many people can go to Zebra? How many people can go to Ingenico? How many people
Yeah.
can go to Google? How many people, most importantly, can go to Microsoft and SAP? Let's get to the word of the week. Having our producer on the show may take us off the run of the show, which is, I gotta keep on my toes to be here for my third week. But like, if you could start all over again, and I'd love to go around NRF, and I'd probably get booted for doing this, but and you said 100 people, and again, it's not just the CIO anymore, the CTO, it's everybody. And I think that's part of the org of the future in terms of how they think. But who would start with the tech stack they have now at the beginning?
Well, and definitely not those billion-dollar companies. They wouldn't.
Right. But they're the
Those
ones that are sitting
absolutely
there.
wouldn't.
Right. I love
I
that
kind of wrote
expression, tech debt.
I wrote about that tongue in cheek, and I said it's legacy people meeting legacy processes. It's very hard to untangle it once you're so far down a cycle of development or kind of capital spend with them. So, how many people would actually like to get out of it? Maybe 50%, 60%. If you were wiping the slate clean, that's the question.
I think it's higher.
I do too. If you've been around for 20 years, 10 years, the technology has changed so quickly, and what you invested in is almost irrelevant now. And there's still lots of companies that deal with monolith within their tech stack. Systems don't talk to each other, or they've invested in an SAP. And think about funding gets cut, leadership changes, those projects start to get, they fall by the wayside because like they are long projects, and who has the appetite to see them through, or the tenacity to see them through, when even what we've just talked about at the beginning of this show, the leadership changes are happening faster and more cyclical.
Totally. And I would just add to what you said, the time and the capital to do these projects. And the second thing I'd add as we sort of get to the word of the week, I guess, Vinny, is, I spoke to someone who shall remain nameless. And they said to me, a very, very senior person who's recently just left a big CEO job, said, over the course of my career, I've bought a lot of software from very few people. So the incestuous nature of the business and the relationships, to go back to like, why do people go to NRF? Sometimes it isn't the best solution that gets chosen. It's more the relationship. And I think that then leads to tech debt, to your point, right? Isn't about really blue skying. Anyway.
But to keep the word of the week, I'm going to call producer chops here and say we'll put it to the end, because I like to kind of wrap it through that lens. But something I didn't ask you on, Nick, was the age profile. Does that have anything to do with the decision around if I'm going to move to unified or composable? Because you take that youthful audience that is generally kind of sits around Shopify and everything that goes with it and all their partners. They only ever see Shopify. They've only ever seen that way of working. So the idea of this monolithic structure, as you said, Jess, or where integrations aren't happening, they just don't understand that. So they're never going to think in those terms. And then there's just one other difference that I suppose you said, the global perspective, Jess. I think the way that businesses are funded here versus, say, in the EU allow people to make decisions in a very, very different way, because there's a lot of board pressures here that maybe don't exist to the same degree across the EU. So your ability to have smaller events with smaller numbers of vendors, where you actually can get down and start making decisions and figuring out, well, my decision is on the shape of where our business is going in the next 5-10 years. We can piece that together way more agilely. And then I'd like to get into it in the org of the future and maybe take it through. It's the roles that are developing. You're going to need a lead architect for your software composition. Most people are going to have to figure out someone to determine that, but also then the customer experience side. So what are those experiences we want to start creating for our customers. I think if we get into that customer mode in particular, Nick, then we will start developing better technologies. So conferences by their nature become more interesting because we are becoming more customer centric as organizations. It's what we demand of the technology providers.
I mean, I agree. The value of a business is not its revenue or EBITDA, it's the growth and sort of activity of its 12-month active customer file. And the sooner that people think and sort of operate that way and plan accordingly and evolve through as such, I think we'll be a better industry and will support that with initiatives that enable us to either connect with customers through the experiences that you're talking about or through communication strategies or other optimal ways of sort of meeting them where they are with all the different avenues that are sort of now available through whether it's Amazon or TikTok Shop or our direct to consumer experiences. Wholesale was big at NRF. We didn't talk about that, and that didn't make my top 10 list, and actually it should have, because it's just another consumption, distribution, and most importantly, brand awareness and acquisition point.
You mentioned your top 10, Nick. Like, what were your top 3? I think AI we know was number 4, but what's your 1, 2, 3?
My number 1 was, and again, it was just like those big booths. I mean, like, but the interesting part, especially with SAP, is it surrounded itself with vendor partners where they weren't investments, I don't believe, on the part of SAC, but they were preferred partners. And so I thought that was really interesting because there were some really actually great technologies. There was one product called Mention Me that I think, to go to one of my other NRF notes, was like in the top 10 with social networks. So I think that the big get better, but they're looking outside to make their ecosystems more competitive with Shopify. I thought that was really interesting.
Yep.
I mean, I just was like shocked that you're spending all this money to go to New York and be at NRF. I mean, it's not cheap and the booths were terrible. So it's like, it really matters. It's no different than spending money on paid social or Google Shopping and not having good imagery. So build a better booth.
Did they spend too much money to get there, and then you're like, the imagery was bad? Like, what happened? They didn't merchandise the storefront. What?
I'm finding it's crazy how much inbound RMW is getting now on help from D2C, B2B, because I think people are recognizing where their deficiencies are.
Yeah.
This is a place in B2B marketing I don't think people recognize. You have to
make sure you want a concierge spirit to take your coat and get you a coffee and bring you in and get you but it's about my level, so I'd happily do that. Going to bring you through number 3.
Social networks. I mean, people are finally catching on to getting their loyal customers to recommend them, but not only recommend them, build better community within them and get more activity. And I think that people are recognize the beginnings of this peer-to-peer. I think that there's a whole new selling model through the affiliate network. And I think Klarna, who was really a buy now, pay later, has morphed into a gigantic affiliate, no better sort of than that. So I think social networks are big.
And I haven't heard you guys, either of you, say anything about TikTok. Were anybody bringing it up? Was it in the hallway conversations and the bar conversations?
There's no marketing suites at all or marketing technologies there that I saw, Nick. I actually hosted a webinar with TikTok yesterday, and they're really bullish over here. But I didn't really pick up any marketing at all.
And I hosted something 2 days ago, a panel with an old friend, and TikTok was right before me, and I caught the end. And TikTok is big in that platform as a connector. I think that NRF is staying clear of TikTok purposely. Okay. I think that we forget that NRF is a lobby with deep responsibilities to its constituents in Washington. And I think that TikTok is definitely not yet passing the smell test in Washington. So that's probably why I think TikTok would love to have been all over NRF.
So they didn't get the invite, is what you're saying?
I don't think, I think, no, I didn't see them, to be honest.
They sponsor everything here. Like every event going, TikTok are going to be there. They have great representation. They have unbelievable sales decks. Like when you're put through the funnel, you forget you're listening to someone pitching. It's pretty impressive stuff, and that's almost wholesale.
The pockets are deep.
Deep pockets.
I'm going
We
to
have a question
answer
coming in.
Yeah.
Rick's question. I was sort of derelict in my duty, didn't put it on this list. It's everywhere. And I think I had the privilege of attending the Shopify Partner Conference in October, and even Shopify, who has a ways to go, in my opinion, with that specific part of its product, is now really looking at B2B. So I think that between things like Flare or other marketplace, their wholesale,
Yeah.
gated password, it's big. And I
Yeah.
don't know if you're seeing a lot of it too, Jess.
Yeah, I think certainly wholesale or just partnerships in general. I think people are looking for new ways to access audiences that they don't have today. And so whether it's wholesale, whether it's partnerships, whether it's like strategically thinking about how me as one retailer can scratch another retailer's back and there's some symbiotic relationship, partnerships are critical to unlocking like that next layer of growth. And it's a different way beyond what you were talking about, Nick, with whether it's affiliates or your traditional marketing channels and brand building. I think people are they don't have the dollars to keep spending on these big brand campaigns anymore. And you've got to be really honed in to some ROAS or MOAS if you're looking at the margin. And these partnerships or some of these other wholesale relationships are ways to unlock it. So I think there's a lot more we can talk about with NRF, but the next evolution that maybe we could spend a minute or two on is what was the org conversations related to NRF as it think about the org of the future? Were there new roles being talked about? Were there evolutions of roles being talked about? Curious to get you guys input on that.
Vinny.
Well, yeah, the things that struck me were the teams that were developing for execution of e-commerce at a micro level are changing really, really dramatically. I think that's where AI is starting to impact. That's something we as leaders need to be aware of. Two other areas that I'm pretty keen to figure out are the architecture. So you've got your blank book or your blank slate, and you want to create your tech stack for your company now. The conversation at NRF was, is it going to be unified or is it going to be composable? And you need someone who needs to understand what your end game is going to be, also the capabilities you have within your org to figure out what that architecture should look like. And it's something that's probably missing a little bit from the unified world, if I'm being honest. That's what I see. The other area that I suppose we felt that was a little bit underserved was innovative technologies and innovative customer technologies that are going to bring people through the experience in a different way. And when we look at layoffs and everything that's going on, the business model has been the same forever. The delivery of it's been the same. We're managing costs at this point, and that's really what we're seeing when we get headlines coming up every day. If we want something to change, we're going to have to change how we think about it. So for me, the role that's emerging, and I've seen it in some sophisticated orgs, they're putting in a customer experience director or owner or someone who can architect what is it we really want people to experience when they deal with our brand or in our store, to kind of capture how that fits with technology too. And they're kind of two roles that are quite different from traditional IT and sales and marketing. It's talking about experience. And let's not forget, brand experience will cover internal culture as well. I think you mentioned culture at the top, Jess. It's a word we haven't used all week, but God, is it important? When you see what Shopify have created with their, and I don't want to go too deep on Shopify, but with their community of app builders, I think there's nearly 45,000 in their community right now. That's a lot of people selling your story. That's a lot of people believing in the vision, and it makes it easy for them then to go hunt in packs. And when they're selling the architecture to you, it's usually two or three things are sold at once. So controlling that a little bit yourself, they're kind of the two areas that I've seen emerge. Nick, I don't know if you see that different.
No, I think it's really well said. I would only add to that, I think brand as media becomes more real. It's no longer so transactional that we have, a supply side and a demand side. I think that they're marrying in the org of the future. It's not as sort of segmented and so or separated. And I think we talked a bit about this with Adam last week. I think the most responsible and effective organizations are one who have conjoined business partners at middle management versus needing it to go to an executive committee. And so I think we see head of people no longer HR. We see culture and community titles. We see chief storyteller. So I think that the notion of connection to communities of customers and engaging and keeping those customers become really important. I also think where we're making investments. So I think the layoffs in many senses make sense. I think, sometimes it's done out of necessity, sometimes it's done out of future thought and opportunity. And I think either way, we have, at least in places I've worked, the tendency to, someone once said to me, it's like creep. I gotta
Mhm.
have someone, and it's like, we sort of don't get to the breaking point. We wait before, or we go before. So I'd say we're right sizing things now, but I'd say our future is built on more agile workforce with more focus on marketing, not the notion of like building brand marketing, but selling product marketing, and that responsibility transcending everybody from the person, designer, merchant who kind of designs and buys product to the person at the end that sells product. But even the people on the FP&A side or the finance side, the logistics side, how can anybody contribute to planning better, executing better, managing better, and ultimately aligning around new KPIs together so that there's organizational success? It's like a flatter, communal, together
Yep.
org
There's
versus a siloed, very
Where
limited.
I have to just think about this function and this function alone, and somebody else is going to worry about all
Yeah,
the
and
other.
don't
there's something in that you said that's a skill that's been missing for a long time. It exists in the UK. I experienced it loads when I worked at eBay. Was the notion of a trading manager. So someone who comes in the morning, walks the shop floor, and makes sure that all the strings that need to be pulled are pulled, and if something is not happening, they know where to go for it. And
so
that is not something you can teach. I think it's something you have to learn. And one of the interesting things that an old colleague of mine, Gordon Newman, did, and he was head of a department store here. He used to retrain staff as redundancies came through. So as merchandisers off the floor got let go, he retrained them to write content for product because they knew how to articulate a product message. But all these people who are now maybe out of jobs are looking for something that they're going to switch careers into. I think there's got to be some level of focus on, can we upskill these huge numbers of people to make them more effective for the future of retail and online selling.
Well, and I think that requires a very strong foundation of all the fundamentals that you have. Who's your brand? What do you stand for? What's your mission? What's your focus? And having that so permeated throughout the organization that it's recited, in a meeting, or if you ask someone, they know exactly what the vision is, and fly the plane and
build a plane.
build the plane at the
Love that.
same time. It becomes really difficult, and I
That's
think that's one of the biggest challenges today of companies, organizations, that you're not taking that time to sit back and say, all right, do we have the right foundation so that when we do bring on new talent, when we do need to evolve and up level our talent, we've got the capabilities to do that? Or because if everybody else is just making their own translation of what they think it is, it all starts to fall apart.
why we talked about Nike, why we're talking about Stanley, and why we'll continue doing it. Is to, I mean, it's educational because people like Stanley are doing these things correctly.
Yeah.
I mean, just think about Stanley. It's pink, and
Oh,
I was going to do two, but
okay.
apparently the other one went to school with one of my children. So now,
This is not a paid
no,
endorsement.
it
It
is
is not.
not.
Nick,
It
what
is
are you doing
not.
to us?
It is
What
not. I
are
mean,
you doing?
if only we had the power that Stanley sort of showed. And I know, Jess, you can talk a bit about it. Like, it's a crazy story, and
It
if
is.
only we could bottle virality.
Which is what everybody wants, right? And
Yeah.
so we can fire up the slide if you don't mind. I mean, I'm sorry, when in 2019 their revenues were not that strong. We're talking now they're upwards of 750 million, and they really were this legacy brand, 110 years old, known for kind of the old archaic slogans of "Tell the lady what you want." That was the 1975 slogan, targeted to men. And look at where they are today, where droves and droves of women are powering this brand power and making this magic happen. And really, it was three women that changed the trajectory of this company with the buy guide. which
So
I think is
crazy.
pretty amazing. And so when you talk about Stanley and what works, it is this kind of almost trifecta of things that happened at the same time, capitalizing also on the I think the momentum that maybe the tailwinds that also were probably primed and ready to happen within social media. And so it was Ashley Lasore, Taylor Cannon, and Lindley Hutchinson, who are the founders of the Buy Guide, still a blog that exists today and is very successful. Who Ashley was the one who actually said, I love this brand. Guess where she bought her first Stanley?
I will guess like Home Depot, Lowe's, Sears.
Bed Bath and Beyond. She
Not
bought
far, not far, not far from
her
Sears.
first Stanley at Bed Bath and Beyond and loved it so much. You got to go get it. And they couldn't find it anywhere. And so she contacted the company. And at the same time, you had their new leadership coming in, who was from Crocs, Terrence Riley, who was saying basically, what are you guys working on? And they mentioned this blogger. Hey, this company's contacted us. Like they want to sell some products. He's like, great. You got to cut a PO for 10K. They'd never sold anything on their site before, didn't have a warehouse, didn't have all of those things in place, set it up and sold out within basically a few days. And so that
Amen.
really started to like build on this momentum for Stanley. And now you've got Water Talk on TikTok. You've got Stanley that has 275% year over year increase in quencher sales. And I think really the question I had for you guys is, what else do you guys see that they're doing right? What makes this brand interesting? And do we think that they can continue the momentum?
The one thing that strikes me is they've got a great balance of mass distribution and scarcity all at once. So you see these frenzied videos of people trying to pull them off shelves. Yet the village, well, the town that I live in is only 22,000 people. It's about 5 miles in diameter, and there's this tiny little store. It's only about 2 meters wide and 4 meters long, and the thing that they have inside their front door is Stanley cups. And this was December 23rd for last minute shoppers like me, and it's sitting beside Carhartt and all these other adjacent brands that are for the right kind of customer. But I just thought it's that balance of distribution and scarcity that's incredible that they're able to balance those two things off, because distribution for me is such an important balancing act to get right at the best of times.
Another preaching of Nick Kaplan is, plan your business to your customer file. You'll get your distribution relatively right so that, inventory kills. It really does.
It does.
Too much inventory is a whole nother topic, and not enough inventory, another topic. It's funny when I grab the Stanley, I should be like, oh, it's so hot right now. It's on fire.
Not an endorsement.
I think that,
You can also do curls with it,
exactly. I mean, if you take the two quenchers and fill them with water, maybe.
Yeah.
But look, I think that it goes back to a lot we talked about last week vis-a-vis never really wanting to raise capital when you need it, and changing when you can, not when you have to. And I think that's the problem, is to go back to something Jess said, which I thought was really the crux of it, to have that acceptance or that tolerance for risk, so to speak, which really
Yeah.
like let's just assume, right, that Stanley makes these for like $5. I mean, I'm gonna use a round number. 5 times 10, $50,000. For a $50,000 investment to buy those 10,000 units, right? That sold out right away, right? I think it was like
Mhm.
5,000 and 5,000, Jess, you
Yeah.
told me.
Yeah.
And that basically put them on the map. So what I'd say is, yes, it can stay hot. I think that when my daughters are young, they're 7 and 11. And when that sector kind of goes into something, sometimes it's, the kiss of death for the older consumer that everybody
Yes.
wants. But I would be long on
You're long
Stanley.
on Stanley?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do
I
they go from do they have another comp of like 275%? I mean, my wife couldn't find these at the holiday time. My sister had like procure them from somewhere. Maybe from Vinny, next time I'm gonna call you to go to your shop.
yeah.
Well, you've
Okay.
just killed Stanley aspirations for your kids, because when they see their dad drinking at them, they go, "That's not for me."
I'm not a Stanley guy, but I do think it's really interesting. And again, this world, I mean, our world is led by women. I mean, it's a woman's world, and how brands. I mean, I get it that there are tons of men and there are products that focus on men, but This brand gained its success through women.
Yes, and I will just end on Stanley with the quote from Ashley to also not only to Stanley when she basically told them they're missing this marketing opportunity, but to other brands as well. She said any brand on the planet that isn't marketing to the 25 to 50-year-old woman is really missing the mark. And
Vinny, can I go like this, Vinny? Agree? Like any brand that's not marketing, thumbs down.
Yeah.
You do whatever you want. It seems like you're on a solo run here, Nick. So
yep. So all right. And speaking of brands and speaking of where we're going in the future, I think we want to land the next probably 2 minutes, if you can hang with us, on some new data we have around consumers and the happiness index. And this is 10 years old. It still stands the test of time, because while it feels like the house is on fire and things are coming down, we have a new survey from Axios Vibes, who were basically like, they're assessing the American state. We'll talk about that. And then we also had our friends, in the banking and investment community in Davos. And it was this shiny, happy bankers land where you have lots of people, mainly, some of the bankers who are feeling like the recession is gone. Someone from David Rubenstein, who was the co-founder and co-chairman of the Carlyle Group, said now that recession fears are gone, interest rates are coming down, almost certainly very soon. You're going to see a lot more M&A activity, a lot more private equity activity. The Bank of America CEO said consumers in the US and Europe are in pretty good shape, and he thinks that the year ahead is looking good. So let's flip to one more of the Axios Vibe survey, and then Nick and Vinny, I'd love to just get your closing remarks here. So the Axios Vibe survey, they do it with Harris Poll. It's about 2,200 people that get surveyed, and they said 63% of Americans rate their current financial situation as being good, and 19% who say it's really good. I think we got one more stat here that came from this survey. 66% think that 2024 is going to be better than 2023, and 85% feel that we could change our personal financial situation for the better this year. I don't know who these 2,200 people are that they keep interviewing, but supposedly these stats haven't moved that much in the past 20 times the Harris Poll has asked this question. What the hell is going on here?
Can I jump in, Mr. O'Brien?
Go for it.
I'll just be brief. Interest rates were supposed to come down in March. Now they're saying June.
Yep.
Inflation is still rising. Consumer wages are flat, if not negative. I heard an interesting stat at breakfast this morning. A buddy of mine in the world of distress told me that worldwide, so the 8 billion people on this planet, for each of those people, there's $37,500 worth of debt. And the GDP of that worldwide population is 12,000. Do the math.
I'm not a quant, but it doesn't add up.
No.
Can't wait to go tell my kids they're in debt.
Exactly. Tell them to start. All of our kids should just start working now.
They probably need to save their pennies, right? Is this what we're saying?
Or be smart enough to buy the Stanley in like the drops that happen. Exactly.
There we go.
Exactly.
Yeah, they are reselling on eBay for $400.
Or they should be learning prompting, because that will probably be a skill for the org of the future. AI prompting, get the most out of it, but not for your schoolwork.
Just a PSA there at the very end. Thanks, Nick. That was really delicately put.
I don't know who is coming up with this information, but I even heard cautious optimism from service providers at NRF. Is that because they need to sell software? I think we're in a tough spot.
Yeah, and it's global. It's not just over your side of the pond. We're feeling it here too. In fact, if the lights go out, you know what happened.
Exactly. Little flicker here. So Vinny, bring us home with the word of the week. I know this wasn't in my vocab.
Yeah, I'm not going to try. Do you want to try and pronounce it, Nick?
I'll try.
It's pronounced mehel. And mehel is a word because I saw a lot of it at NRF. I experienced it by getting to meet Nick and to get to know you guys in general. But it's an old Irish term that describes how people come together to help one another out. The mehel is a powerful concept in years gone by, and it could be simple things like harvesting crops. But when you think about how this little group came together and what everyone was trying to achieve all week at NRF, pretty much everything that we talk about in general. Most people want to do good and do good things with good people. And it's one of the reasons that we keep coming back. And I hope that people who listen do too. So we love sharing those experiences, and we get a lot from them as well, personally and professionally. But this feels all about the personal stuff. So Mehel is my word of the week.
I like it.
It's great.
We'll try to work it into a sentence. I'll let you know how it goes.
Please do.
Can you have your phone like take a video of that, please?
I will. You can catch it on the talk.
Vinny's always looking for content for the next show.
I know.
Man,
Yeah.
so
We
awesome.
have had an amazing show. Thank you so much, Vinny, for being here, for keeping not only the show running, but bringing your perspective. I do still have FOMO, even though it sounds like I maybe missed some things and didn't miss so much, but hopefully we can all get together and hang out soon.
Shop Talk.
Shop Talk's coming up.
You missed me being 45 minutes late for breakfast, and Nick was like a bear. That's something you don't want to do.
I mean, I, unlike you, there's maybe like 22,000 people live on my block, so it's a whole different vibe in New York, my friend.
That is
especially
scary.
when I'm hungry. But listen,
I'm excited to show people my moves.
They're good. Yeah, I mean, but thank you guys for having me on the show once again. It's been amazing, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to dance. So with that, I practiced this time.
Oh, great! I want to see these.
I got to know my place, so I'm gonna back where I'm more comfortable next week. Thanks, guys. Love doing the show with you.
Gratitude.
Have a great weekend, everybody.
Thank you guys. Bye, guys.